Hello, hello, and welcome back, Woo Crew. We are here for another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I'm your host, Eileen, and I'm here with.
Hi, guys, it's Ellie.
And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about some sacred tools. We've covered a few in previous episodes. There are so many. So we're going to touch on some crystal stuff, pendulums, candles, animal remains, and we'll wrap up with soup season magic, which we're both really excited about. So make sure you stick around until the end of the pod.
Excellent. We're going to start off today with a review from our podcast. You can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This is from Misfits Fontaine, and it says, Ellie and Eileen are pure magic. This podcast is exactly what many of us need to be called home to all that is woo and witchy. We want to thank you so much, Misfits Fontaine, Janelle, for this. We always appreciate your reviews.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, we announced at the end of last episode that we have a Patreon. I feel like we didn't do an amazing job of ramping up to it. You're like, oh yeah, that thing that they talked about last week. So let's talk about it some more. We are really, really excited about this because we love coming to you every week with the podcast, but we want to connect deeper. We want some community. We want some connection. Both of us really love that. And we know that a lot of you are craving that as well. So we are super, super excited. The Patreon is live. It's going to be linked in the show notes. And our first event inside will be a new moon card pull from Ellie. That's going to be happening on the evening of December 12th at 7 PST. And if you show up to that live, Ellie will pull a card for you for the new moon. I am so excited. I cannot wait to be there. I will be there too. And that's one of the exciting things we're doing. We're going to have a monthly book club where we're going to deep dive into some of the books that really shaped our witchy journeys, as it were. And then we'll talk about those, come together in collective and talk about them, share our insights, all that good stuff. That's going to be happening on December 28th. And we're reading If Women Rose Rooted for December, which I'm so excited to revisit. Is a perfect excuse to read it again. And then dates to be TBD, but we're going to have a monthly, let's call it a witch's corner for now. We're still swirling ideas for the name, but where we come together and you can ask us any and all of your witchy and woo related questions. There's more. There's some stickers coming. They're being designed as we speak. There are Wheel of the Year ceremony guides. You're going to get altar building from both Ellie and I throughout the year. So head on over to the link in the show notes. Click on subscribe or become a member. I don't even know what the button says on Patreon yet, but it's only $11.11 a month. And we would love, love, love to have you in there.
Yes, please come join us. We are bubbling over with excitement about all of these deepening practices with you.
Do you want to tell us about, before we dive into our topics today, what is a magical thing that has happened to you this past week, Ellie?
Yeah, this last week, I took myself on a solo date.
Ooh.
So as a projector and as somebody who's so into pleasure, luxuriating on a solo date is pretty top tier for me. And so I took myself to North Vancouver. I live in the Lower Mainland. I went over to North Vancouver and I went through the mountains, did a little hike. I took myself out. Actually, originally I took myself out for coffee and to do some reading and journaling. I'm doing some manifestation for 2024. And then I went and did a little hike, and just being in the mountains there's nothing else like it. And then I took myself out for lunch, and it was just, and some people watching, and it was just exactly what I needed. Nothing fancy, just exactly what I wanted to do, and literally was guided by, okay, what now? Okay, what now? Where do I go now? Instead of having this goal of I'm going to climb to this spot on the side of the mountain, or I'm going to make sure that I'm having lunch by a certain time. It was just really free flowing. And my projector self, and my introverted self for that matter, was absolutely delighted. So that was my highlight. That was the most magical thing for me last week. What about you?
That sounds so magical. Yeah, I love that you let your intuition tell you when to do what and then how much and all of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a magical moment yesterday, actually. We're recording this on a Thursday, and I'm in the middle of an 8-week pottery course. It's my third introductory wheel throwing course. And this time through, I really had a bit of a breakthrough on class number 2, I think. All of a sudden, I could center things in less than half an hour, which meant that I could actually make things. And by the time I was pulling my walls, I still had enough clay left to make something sizable. So yesterday in class, I made 3 bowls that are actually going to be big enough to use once they're all fired and glazed. And so I was so pleased. But I think that the most magical thing about it, and I had this thought while I was walking home, and I actually made a reel about it if you're following me on Instagram, was the recognition that I am really good in this particular scenario at allowing myself to feel pride and delight in my own achievements. So throughout all 3 of the classes, even when I was terrible, anytime I kind of round a corner or do something, I'm like, oh my God, it's so amazing. Like I'm quite vocal. I'm the only person in the class. I'm constantly exclaiming, constantly cheering for myself and for other people when I notice it. But I really recognized on my way home that I'm the only one who does that in the class. And it's a class full of women. And I had this thought that, I mean, pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's something that has been bashed out of us because it's boastful, or it's like, I'm better than you. And that's 100% not how it has to be. Pride is really helpful for developing self-worth, self-esteem, but also life satisfaction. I came home and like Googled, what is pride good for? It's the synonyms are all really, really beautiful. So that was kind of my magical moment of being like, yeah, why don't we celebrate our achievements more often and in more spheres of life? Like, let's normalize that. So here I am praising myself for these usable bowls.
Clapping over here. I didn't realize this was only session 3 of beginner 101. I also do pottery and absolutely love it. Like it is probably the one activity that I'm like, okay, everything else can come off my schedule. Pottery stays.
Yeah.
And I did pottery. I did probably, you know, intro courses for the first 2 years that I did pottery. So you making something in course 3, session 2 is just, that's major. Way to go. I'm
Thank you.
also proud of you.
Thank you. Really, there was a breakthrough. We also switched our clay body, got just a tiny bit softer, and that made a huge difference for me.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's very, things just start clicking and it's wonderful. It's like magic. It really is like magic. I think that's why I like it.
I have a story to tell actually
Okay, tell
about
us.
pottery. And I feel like
Mhm.
this is really important for what it is that we're doing here. Like the metaphor for life is just so major. So the first pottery class that I did, I think maybe I had really looked at pottery for some time, like the craft, and I love pottered bowls and mugs. And so I really looked at how they were made, like the detail for how they were made.
Mhm.
And so my very first class, my very first 8-week session, excuse me, I made some really nice things. And my teacher was a lovely teacher who pushed people to go further and to do bigger. And there was a lot of hands-on, like watching you pull something. So there was some great instruction in this private class that we were in. And when I came back for the next 8-week session, she said to me before I left, actually, the first one, she said, listen, this is what's going to happen because you've had some really great success in this one, is that you're going to now go through a phase where you get frustrated because your hands can't make what your mind can fathom. Like you
Mhm.
want to make this design for the bowl, but you can't quite pull walls that tall, or you can't quite get the feature and design properly. And so I was like, oh yeah, it won't happen to me. My ego was like, no, I'm humble. And so by the second class of the second session comes in, and I went to her with this piece that I was like, I just can't seem to get it, whatever it was that I was trying to focus on. And she said to me, remember I told you that your mind and your hands won't link up? And I was like, fuck. Okay, so this is what's happening. And so it was a really great humbling experience that sometimes we have Like we want to create this thing and we know in our mind, like, I know that I have the capacity to do this, but I don't yet have the skill to do it. And this is what I love about the pride that you have right now is that your skill is now catching up to what your mind is like fathoming about eating ramen out of a massive bowl. And it is yours, my friend. It is at your fingertips, made by you.
Truly, truly. Yeah. I think I derive a lot of pleasure from it too, for a couple of reasons, like the flow state it gets you into. It really is. I don't know that I've almost ever encountered a better way to just have to be fully present without other distracting thoughts. And the tactile experience, I miss having my hands on bodies. That was part of midwifery work, was this really intimate connection with bodies and that touch and my hands being my eyes and so much of that work. And so I think that there's this really lovely connection. It's a clay body. And I think there's all sorts of little threads we could pull from there. But I think there's something about that. You know, I sometimes will close my eyes when I'm centering because that's easier for me to feel and do. And I'll like obviously not close my eyes when I'm pulling the whole time, but sometimes I will to feel the start of a pull. I'll be like, it's easier for me with my eyes closed. It reminds me of when people be like, do you need the lights on for catching babies? And I'm like, what? Like, my hand is inside of a woman. I can't see in there anyways.
There's no looking at this point.
There's no look. Like checking a cervix. Yeah, you can't see that. I do not need light.
My
Yeah.
goodness. I also think that when this is now turned into a pottery episode, everybody come along for the
very well might just
when you are doing pottery, when you're doing the act of creating pottery, if you will, both hands have to touch at all times. So even whenever you're trimming, you have your tool and your other hand touches the vessel and your tool at the same time. And you're making me realize how much this is really an intuitive craft, because you have to really understand the density of things, the feeling of things. Oh, that wall is thinning here, or we've got a bubble here, or there's too much clay at the bottom, we can pull more of that up, or we'll trim that off afterwards. There's so much that just that tactile touch does for you as a creator. I'm also thinking, I always, as a segue here, this is the Woo Curious podcast After Dark episode.
Ooh, yeah.
We're gonna dip into the potential of a Woo Curious After Dark. But I've always said how extremely queer the act of pottery is. And you, I think, really hit this home. Whenever you're checking somebody's cervix, you're present in that moment of checking a cervix. When you're pulling clay up, my friends, if you have never had, we can cut this part out later, but if you've never had lesbian sex, yes, you have, if you're a potter. Okay? Yes, you have.
I don't think we need to cut that out.
And then I cackle. Especially opening up. I'm like, I am blushing so hard right now. The sun is so bright here. My face just looks completely white, but I promise you it is the same color as my pink scarf right now. When you open up a vessel, more people who want to make love to women just need to do pottery, because it is the same way you open a woman up, my friends. It is the same. Your lesson, as my father would say, that's your lesson of the day. Pottery After Dark on the Woo Curious podcast.
I love it. I love it. Oh, okay.
Tools.
Yeah, different tools. Shall we? Shall we dive in to some tangible, concrete tools, the things that we use to live a more witchy life, or weave witchcraft into our lives. And in past episodes, we've spoken to tarot and oracle and altar building, and we had a whole episode on plants, so herbs and burning and essential oils. And yeah, as I mentioned in our little intro there, today we'd like to travel into the realm of crystals and pendulums and candles and animal remains. Maybe we won't get to all of them today. We're going to try.
Let's do it.
Depends on how many pottery tangents we go on.
Don't test me.
Yeah, we could probably have a whole episode where we keep talking about that.
It's true. You want to start us off with crystals?
Yeah, sure. I love how naive and new I am to so much of this stuff. It's interesting as I start to think about using these tools and practicing with these tools. And I've said over and over how I tend, with all of the tools, to just let my intuition guide me and then figure out why it guided me there after the fact. But as with so many things, as you start to play with them, let yourself go to a crystal shop for one. Bring cash, but only as much as you want to spend, and don't bring your card in.
And no more.
No more than you want to spend. And let yourself just kind of be guided. Don't read the descriptions, check the price. Some are more expensive than others, but like let yourself be drawn to what you like and then find out what they mean, I would say. As you start to work with crystals, a lot of it is their energetics, right? They'll be a pull. They're pretty. So pick the ones that are the prettiest to you and let yourself be right. Would
Let
be my
yourself.
as always. I started with kind of the basics, and a lot of people will. The quartzes, clear quartz, rose quartz, smoky quartz, they're cheap, they're easily accessible, and they have lots of use. Like clear quartz can be kind of substituted for any crystal in a spell, for instance. But there's also the fun of just being like, "Ooh, I like this one. It's blue, and I don't know why I want it, but I do." What are some of your favorite crystals, Ellie?
Well, I as well started with some, actually, let's talk about the journey of the graduation of crystals. Normally, you start with the little, like, tumbled crystals, like the little small, tumbly crystals. Yeah, exactly.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see these. If you're
Yeah.
not, you can go to the YouTube channel.
We'll post some photos, actually. I have a crystal that I might ask a question about in our Instagram stories next week. So
Ooh, yeah, fun.
usually you start with little tumbled crystals, and I started wearing crystals in my bra. Yes, indeed. Basic witch over here. I started wearing crystals in my bra and still do on occasion. I've graduated a lot from smaller crystals to bigger pieces. And so usually you go smaller pieces, and then sometimes you can get into things that are a bit more unique or a bit more tuned into what it is that you're actually looking for. And so you have more raw crystals that are just cut or uncut. You have points or wands. One of my favorite crystals actually is this ocean jasper egg, and things like wands, and which are just so lovely. But a little known, maybe not a little known, but a good fact to know about that clear crystal quartz is that it's an amplifier for whatever you put it next to, which is
Mm.
kind of cool. My
Hmm.
favorite quartz, excuse me, my favorite quartz is usually rose or smoky, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do have a piece of,
We're both gonna be like pulling things off our
yeah,
shelves.
this is show and tell, actually. One of my favorite crystals are either rainbow moonstone, black moonstone. There's these palm stones as well that I keep on my desk that are just
Mm-hmm.
flat, and I use them a lot. I'm either on calls or whatnot. But rainbow moonstone and, oh my gosh, the name of this is totally escaping me right now. It is labradorite. There we go.
Oh yeah.
And I just absolutely adore shiny crystally things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I'm the same way where I just started with actually, I think my first bit of crystal may actually have come in the monthly, and it's not monthly anymore, but they had a monthly box, Pranic Forest. I have mentioned them in a previous episode. Their bath bombs are to die for, but they have a monthly box. And I used to get it every month. But I think that it was in one of those boxes that I got a piece of crystal, and it was kind of my first one that was like in my witch era. I have a hunk of amethyst that I've had for ages. I have a hunk of quartz as well that I was just like, these are pretty. I like them. Or I was gifted them. And the wearing in the bra is so funny because I have done that. I do that, certainly. I had a healing once where at the end she was like, there's a mushroom in your lung. I don't know what it's about. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't know what it's about either, but I have this tiny little Dalmatian jasper mushroom. And so for about a month, I wore that in my bra. I was like, okay, let's just see how that goes.
Love
And
this.
I think I've mentioned before, I am notorious for getting to the airport security line and then being like, anything in your pockets? And I'm like, oh yeah, shit. I have rocks in my pockets.
That's nice of
So
me.
I'll put those in the bin with my cell phone. Yeah, they're fun. It's so fun to experiment.
It's true. And you can also, we talked about palm stones, but even bigger raw pieces. And you mentioned a nice big piece of quartz or amethyst. Like I remember going to friends' parents' house and them having these massive pieces of amethyst at the front door and thinking to myself, like, wow, this is crazy. Like it's almost as tall as I am. I'm also short for everybody who doesn't know. So I think that you can really do a variety of things and use crystals in a variety of ways. But I have a really fun story about some elder queers in the community and my former partner and I, she had some really great friends that we used to, go to their house quite a bit, and they were both teachers. One was a geologist and math teacher, and the other one I think was a biology teacher, actually. And so the geologist said to me one day, because she saw I was wearing a piece of rock in a piece of jewelry that I had, and she kind of gave me this look like, oh, you're into rocks, huh? And so she's like, I've got these really, rare stones. And so she brought out this collection of things for me to like see and touch. It was so good. And the other ones, my former partner was like, of course, Ellie is going to be so into this right now. And she had opal in water still, like, because she told me the story about her getting opal. But at this one point, partway through us touching everything that she had this sort of twinkle in her eye, and she's like, so do you think these are just rocks, or do they have like magical powers? I was like, oh no, they have magical powers, like 100%. And she was like, kind of nodded to me, as the geologist in her, she was like, I'm here for the rock aspect, but I see you. I see you with those magical powers. I'm not quite there yet, but I see you. And it was just so lovely to bond over these crystals at her home. Anyways, that was a really special time in my life to be chatting crystals with people who, at that point in my life, I was very much still in the closet. Well, in the woo closet for that matter, but not in any other closet. And so it was really nice to just sort of have this conversation with somebody without having to explain the magicalness of and the justification. Not that we don't need to justify to anybody. But in that point in my life, I felt like there was a need to justify why I was wearing crystals in my bra. I feel
that. Yeah. I feel like I've always, as we talk, I'm like, oh, there's all these little threads that I keep coming back over and over to how hilarious it is that I was the only one surprised when I started calling myself a witch. Because I'm thinking back now to my obsession. I think it started in high school, maybe, with lapis lazuli. And I still love it. It's one of my favorites. For anybody who doesn't know, it's the really deep blue, almost purpley stone. It was really prized all through Egypt and that part of the world by royalty. They'd actually, I believe, would grind it up to help make their purple dyes, or that indigo was part of that. But they wore lapis all the time. It was the color of royalty. It's really, really beautiful. And I've just been obsessed for ages. And I remember discovering this necklace once. I was in Canmore. It was a few days before Christmas, and we were just shopping, maybe last minute shopping for my mom or something. Anyways, I was out with my dad. We went into this shop, and there was this necklace there that was these spherical beads of lapis that were like, the middle one was the biggest, and then they got smaller towards the end, just like almost like a choker, a really short necklace. And I just stood there gaping for ages. And my dad must have gone back later that day, because I opened up this gift from him on Christmas morning, and I was so like, one of the most thoughtful gifts ever. My dad doesn't usually buy me gifts. My mom buys the gifts from the list that I send her. And so that was just like this really, really special. It's so special to receive crystals, I think, because there's like this added layer of meaning to them.
Definitely. Lapis is also big in my books. It's actually the crystal that it helps with opening your throat chakra.
Blue is the color of the throat chakra, which is extra lovely that this necklace kind of sits there. And I am throat chakra dominant. And so that's kind of an area where that's my task in this life, is to speak and to open that up and be present in it. So all sorts of layers of meaning that you can see in hindsight.
Yeah. So your crystals can be used as part of your spells. They can be used on your altar. They literally can be used to make things look nice. You can wear them And then there's also things like feng shui that uses crystals for different parts of your house. Like if you want to call in more money, or the last healing session that I did with my energy healer, she said, you're going to take your biggest piece of black tourmaline and you're going to put it at the door because we're not welcoming anything evil back into your house, you know?
Mm-hmm.
As we cleansed the palette of our home this summer that just passed, excuse me. And so my biggest piece of tourmaline is black tourmaline is there. And you also have crystals that are great for like EMFs or by your computer. And so I do keep a bunch of crystals just right around my computer because of this exact reason. So if you're interested, there's some great books out there. Crystal 101, it's this little picturesque book. There's Crystal 101 and Crystal 102, I think, or Volume 1 and Volume 2, which is a really great book to add to your collection. And any other crystal books out there that you can get your hands on will have a wealth of information for you. And a little shout out to a friend of ours, Andrea, who just took over a crystal and metaphysical shop in Victoria, BC. It is called Inwards, and they have the most incredible crystals that they just brought in. They actually purchased crystals from a personal collection, and they've been showing them on Instagram. Go ahead and give them a follow on Instagram. Exquisite pieces from that shop.
Ooh, cool. I think I missed those posts. I hate how Instagram doesn't show me what I want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there are questions left over from this would be a great topic to bring to Witch's Corner if you wanted to join the Patreon.
Yeah, let's talk more about that inside Patreon for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Shall we move on to pendulums?
Yes, let's.
Okay, so I love this. We're both picking up our pendulums. I just started working with my pendulum more, like literally just like Friday last week.
Wow.
Because every year Carmen Spagnola, who is, I want to call her like my witch mother. She knows I exist, I think, but she doesn't know me the way I know her. She does an intuitive business planning day inside of her community, the Numinous Network. And so I signed up. You can sign up and then drop off. I signed up just for this month so that I could take this intuitive business planning day. And she uses pendulum for a lot of it. And I just love the way that she approaches pendulum use as like a way to relieve some of the mental load of decisions through your day. So I just wanted to drop that in. We're going to talk about kind of like how to use it, what comes up with pendulums, how we both use it. But that was like this light bulb, aha, like, do I have, I don't know, chicken or beef for dinner? I don't want to decide. Okay, let your pendulum decide, because there's no wrong answer, right? If there's something that you need to decide that the decision holds a lot of weight, you don't want to use a pendulum for that. But if it's something that there's really no attachment to the outcome and either option is just as good and you don't want to have to think, pendulum. So simple.
So simple. So what a pendulum is a crystal on the end of a cord. Usually your cord, in most cases, is a chain. And I learned this really interesting thing about your pendulum. So first thing is that I use my pendulum a lot. And I use it daily for multiple things. And it's true, I use it for a lot of, like, do I need to work on this today? Do I need to not work on this? Do I need to, do I take the dogs out in the morning or do I take them out in the evening? It's almost always in the evening. Of course it is. And so I use my pendulum a lot. The interesting thing that I learned about this is that not every pendulum, so your pendulum can tell you basically yes or no, or I don't know. And so you begin, whenever you have your pendulum, first to determine which way the circle goes, clockwise or counterclockwise, to what is a yes. So you ask it, let's say, for example, can you show me what a yes looks like? And then it will turn a certain way. And then you stop it and you say, okay, can you show me what a no looks like? It's doing this already. And then I don't know is usually a combination of the both, or an indecisiveness of back and forth, as it's showing me right now. Now, the next thing is that
I just like to pop in here because I think everybody's going to have a very different, like, I don't get circles. I get a circle for maybe with my pendulum, but for me, back and forth is a yes, and side to side, like a head shake, is a no.
Oh, so I was going to say, if you have multiple pendulums, they may have different
answers.
Or
yeah.
So you have to ask each pendulum. So don't assume that if your back and forth is yes on pendulum A, that it's going to be the same as on pendulum B. So there's that. And
Yeah.
then,
So the way you ask is just to hold it and say, show me yes.
yeah.
And then thank you, please be still. And then show me no. And then thank you, please be still. Show me maybe.
So the interesting thing that I learned is that you actually, because most of your pendulums have a varying degree of chain and a ball at the end of it, that actually your pendulum has a sweet spot for where you get the most potent answer. So it's not necessarily at the end of your chain. And so you can go and ask it a question like, is my name Ellie? And then whatever it is that your pendulum says, you continue to move your hand up the chain until you find that sweet spot where it is the most potent or the most responsive. And so mine has a knot in that place, and I immediately go to that spot whenever I'm asking questions.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And also, you don't have to go out and buy a pendulum that's a crystal at the end of a chain. You can use a ring on a necklace. You can use a needle on a thread. You can use your body as well as your pendulum. So it's not necessary to have you probably want to because they're pretty and they're fun and you get to pick a crystal, but you certainly do not need to in order to do pendulum work.
Yeah, I love this. I love this.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else about pendulums?
Yeah, I liked the learning that I took. So obviously, yes, no, maybe questions are really, really easy and a great way to start with pendulums. You can get a little more complicated if you want and draw yourself like a pendulum chart. So if you think of, when you were a kid and you draw the sun rising above the edge of a paper with the rays, so you can make one of those and write a few different options that you may be choosing between and see which way the pendulum swings over that. You can also ask things like, to what degree is this true, with one side of it being like 0% and the other being 100%, and see kind of where you're getting that angle happening. If you don't have a piece of paper, you can use your hand and your fingers too, because they spread out, and you just do it over your hand and see kind of which way it's going, just assigning any meaning to each of your fingers, and then seeing where that pendulum goes, which finger it points to. So there's all sorts of different ways to get a little more complex with it.
I have a pendulum card, is maybe the right, like a place card that has a design on it, and it has yes, no, maybe. And so there's also those out there that was gifted to me, so I'm not exactly sure where you can get them. But there's that you can use as a card for determining what the answer is. And I have a really curious story. I went to go see a healer quite some time ago, and she focused on, I was having a lot of gut and allergy issues. I'm somebody who has, worked on my gut health for quite some time. And she was one of the first practitioners that I had for gut health. And so she was a biofeedback energetic healer, is what I would call her. She's out of the Toronto area. I need to find somebody else that is like this on the West Coast, because I really enjoyed my time with her. And essentially, she had all of these essences in vials. So corn, non-GMO corn, this flavor of corn, that flavor of corn. So all of these essences, and you would hold the essence sometimes between your legs, because you're pulling the energy of this up into your system. And she would use a pendulum with a grade of 0 to 100 when in asking about what your allergies are. And it's interesting because I didn't know all of the allergies, or I didn't know all of the reactions. Let's call them more reactions that I was having. And so then you do this candida cleanse, and then you can introduce some of the things back into your life. But I remember dairy was completely off the list, and I was really excited to eat dairy again whenever I started to introduce. And so the very first thing that I introduced into my diet was, there's this Colby cheese from a cheese factory near my parents' house in Ontario that is just incredible. And it's not something that I eat very often, but it's one of my absolute favorite cheeses. And so I had a piece of Colby cheese, and I had the worst upset stomach and heartburn afterwards, just terrible. And so whenever we came back for our meeting post cleanse and post introducing some things, and she pendulums a whole bunch of things and touches you with this bioenergetic feedback wand in acupuncture places, it was just so cool. Anyway, I said, I tried to reintroduce dairy and I had this really terrible adverse reaction. So is there anything that we can do? Like, can you touch me somewhere, or can we do something? And she said, what kind of dairy was it? And I said, actually, it was a piece of Colby cheese. And she's like, oh, well, the only reaction that you had actually was Colby cheese. I was like, well, good to know. Now
Oh,
dairy is pretty much off the list again, but we're re-healing guts after many more years of not being in that place. But I remember her holding this pendulum. It was a big wooden pendulum.
oh,
And
cool.
when she asked about gut, like leaky gut, I was like, I have like made it. I'm like almost at 100%. It was 95%. She's like, no, you have a 95% leaky gut. And I was like, okay, that sucks. She's like, we want you more towards the zero. Okay, we've got some work to do.
Mm,
So
mm.
I love how people are using pendulums. I've had other healers use pendulums. I've had massage therapists use pendulums. They are just something that is a really helpful tool as we do healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an interesting one because it is one of those ones for me that was like, okay, like this is made up again. Like my science brain comes in. And I think the moment when I was like, oh, all right, okay, I guess so, was on Friday when Carmen was having us attune to our pendulums and say, show me yes. And then thank you, please be still. If you hold up a heavy thing on the end of a chain, it's really hard to consciously make it be still. And I was doing this with my eyes closed because that's how I roll when I'm tapping into my intuition and my body. And I remember after the first time I said, oh, like it had been going back and forth for yes. And I opened my eyes after saying, thank you, please be still. And I was like, oh, it stopped. Like it was this, I was shocked. I was actually shocked. Like, this is not made up. I don't know. So again, if you are skeptical, that is 100% fine. Use it for the things that are not huge stakes. And you might just be surprised by becoming a convert.
We'll welcome you to the side.
Yeah. Shall
Shall
we
we
talk
talk
about
about
candles?
let's?
Let's, yeah. You go ahead.
So I use candles in a lot of what I do, but I use them mostly as ways to open up an energetic circle and close an energetic circle. So literally lighting the candle is like lighting the room or the path forward. And so in all of my ceremonies or temples and any healing that I do, I light a candle first as a way to light the way. And then as we close our circle and clear the air, the candle gets blown out. And that is a way that we close the energetics of the circle or the temple or the ceremony. And I personally only use beeswax candles, but I use them for a multitude of reasons. One is that they're a very clean burning material. My wife is really into wanting to make a butter candle, and I was like, we will make a butter candle, okay? We for the holiday, here's the thing. I will make butter everything, okay? I only use beeswax candles because I think that they burn really clean and I really love the smell of them.
Mm-hmm. I was gifted a beeswax pillar candle for my birthday last year, and I want to burn it every day, all day, and I still have it because I do not burn it every day, all day. I was actually just talking in Unleash Your Inner Witch this week about altar building and how, generally speaking, when you're creating your altar, like recrafting it, you're supposed to put new like unburnt candles on it. And I was like, that's just not how I roll, because I have this big, beautiful pillar candle and it's going on every altar until it's gone. And it's not going to be gone for a while at the rate that I burn it because I love it so much.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
a candle fund. Like I burn a lot of candles.
I got really lucky and I won an Instagram giveaway for a bunch of candles. They're soy based, which I think, I mean, are better than obviously whatever the terrible carcinogenic candles are for you in how they burn. But it was from a Calgary company called Always Home Co. And they're beautiful. And she gifted me, I thought it was gonna be like one or two candles, and I think there were 6 or 8 in there, like a crazy number.
Oh,
Yeah, in the winter last
lucky.
year. So I think I have 1.5 left, but I burn quite a bit of candles. I don't currently have a candle budget. However, it's in my future. It's
I
in
love
my
this.
future. And I agree, like beeswax, if I could at this moment afford to only buy beeswax candles and have just beeswax candles, that's what I would do. There's some places too where you can get colored beeswax candles, which is fun. Yay, she's
I
got
have
colors.
some.
Let's talk about colors.
One of the things that Eileen told me about actually was this little. Was it in your box? Was it in one of your boxes that you got a
Oh,
candle?
it was from the woman who does the tarot that I love, the homebound tarot deck that
Okay.
I mentioned, who's in Victoria. She also makes little intention setting kits with like birthday candles, basically, that are beeswax.
Yeah. That's what these are. I got these at Banyan Books. I love them. I'm pretty sure you can also get them at Inwards because I asked Andrea specifically, can you please get spell candles? We need them. We need them. So you can have different colors. I use green candles for money spells. I use red candles for anything passionate, anything sacred pleasure-ish, anything like that. I also have some candles that are in the shape of an egg that I use as we manifest our spirit baby earth side. And you can carve either runes or words or anything into the side of your candle, and then you burn your candle as part of your spell. So they're really amazing tools to have as part of your toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, nobody hates candlelight. So there's that as part of it. But I also really enjoy when I craft altars for the Wheel of the Year ceremony. So these are altars that get built for the ceremony and then they're taken apart afterwards. I really enjoy rolling those candles. So I have ritual oils. I've got a prosperity oil. You could craft whatever kind of oils you want, and then rolling the candle first in the oil and then in like rose petals or anything else you might want to be calling in. You could add salt for protection, any kind of herbs dried and crushed, and rolling the candle in it and then burning them. So it's similar to carving words or runes in the side. It's kind of that activation of specific properties that you're looking for.
I
And
love
there's
that.
something just so soothing about candlelight.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true. I have a whole tray of candles outside, different varieties of candles outside. I'm also a fan. Actually, sometimes you can get, the candles, you can get them at like the dollar store that have Mother Mary on the side of them.
Yes. Yeah. The ones
Sometimes
that
when
come
you
in
go,
the jars.
yes, on occasion I'll burn those outside. And so I have a whole tray of candles because we have a fire table outside and a couch and just like a
Mm.
lovely little nook in the back. And it is one of my favorite things is just to light all of those candles.
Oh, so many. Yeah. Yeah.
Luxurious.
So luxurious. The space that I am renting now to host my Wheel of the Year ceremonies has a fireplace, but they don't burn wood in it inside. So I just filled it with candles. And there's something just delightful about having the space lit with firelight, candlelight, instead
Mm-hmm.
of incandescent light.
Very different feeling. Very
Mm-hmm.
different mood.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other ways that you use your candle?
I just generally have one lit on my desk when I'm working all day. And I often actually for new moon, if I decide to sit down and pull some cards or anything, I'll turn out all the lights in the house and just light candles for that,
Mm.
which makes it hard to read the guidebooks, but but I
But,
persist and persevere.
but
And
easier to use your intuition.
easier to use my intuition, yeah. And for baths too. Like I like having all the lights off and having that soothing the candlelight in the bath.
I almost mentioned, I will mention now, I had a hard time deciding between my most magical moments from last week. And I chose the solo date, but the next day my love ran me a bath. I was feeling a little under
Mm.
the weather. And my love ran me a bath with a bunch of salts and essential oils and candles. And it was just so
Mm.
luxurious to step into an already run bath that
I
somebody else had set up
also
for
had
you.
a bath run for me this past week. That was also, it didn't have salts and oils and stuff in it, but it was
The act
luxurious
of running the water for
nonetheless.
you.
Yeah. He came down, he's like, you've been working for too long. Do you want a bath?
Yes,
Go,
I do.
oh, okay. Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, I do.
Shall we skip to soup and do animal remains another time? Do you want to do soup and then closing, and then we have animal remains for another episode?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So Tell us what kind of candles you use. Tell us if you're going to run out and grab beeswax candles of many colors. If you're listening to this in Calgary, I know the apothecary in Inglewood also carries beeswax colored candles, birthday candles specifically, but they also have slightly bigger ones. And the last thing we're going to talk about is everybody's favorite meal. If it's not your favorite meal, why? Soup.
Soup as the witchiest meal of them all.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've been following us on Instagram on our stories, you'll have seen that we've posted a few times about soup and why it is witchy. It is like the ultimate spell casting.
It really is. So as we place, the meme on the Instagram that we shared was something along the lines of, you can't tell me that placing, plants and herbs and the carcass of a dead animal in a pot of boiling water and stirring it is not witchcraft. And this is exactly how we feel about soup, is that actually before we record almost every single episode, Eileen has a snack and I always ask her, "What are you eating?" And she says soup.
It's true. I would eat soup 3 times a day every day if I could.
I love this. I did not make soup last night, but we've made a lot of soup lately. So let's talk about just this act. I think that when we come back to the simple things in life for what makes witchcraft, it's really about understanding how magical things are woven into mundane practices of our everyday life. Although making soup for me is not mundane, it is a magical experience, but it's all of these elements that we put together of, potentially animal carcass, potentially fruit, vegetables, excuse me. If you put fruits in your soup, let me know. Tell me what you put in. Apple, maybe? And then herbs and spices. And all of this comes together in this really magic elixir that we enjoy, usually in the
has
winter
healing
months.
properties.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason every culture has its own version of something along the lines of chicken soup. Like there's a reason that's what we want when we're ill, because it's not the store-bought stuff, but like if you're making it at home from scratch, from stock you made yourself, it's got everything you need in it. It's so nutritious. It's easy to digest. It's got like all sorts of immune boosters. It's got protein. It's got everything you need. And it's comforting on top of that.
Yeah, very supportive to your immune system. It's true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we want to know, what's your favorite soup? Eileen, what's your favorite soup? Do you have one?
Yeah, it's like Thai clear broth soup. I don't know if it has a name. not tom yum, but like Thai Vietnamese, like pho, but not like that wouldn't be my favorite, but it's up there. Asian soups, Asian noodle soups.
Yeah.
Any Asian noodle soup that's spicy will do the trick for me. I'm not like, I like creamy-ish soups, but those aren't my go-to. I want it to be piping hot and spicy.
Interesting. I don't know if you've ever had a soup called jampong. It's a Korean, well, it's actually a Chinese soup that was adopted by Koreans. And it's a seafood noodle soup. And it is, I'm full of stories today. One year for my birthday, my former mother-in-law took me, because I love like spicier the better as well. I love super spicy. And she said to me with this like evil look in her eye, like, I'm testing you. I found the spiciest jampong in the city. We're going to take you. And I was like, bring it. And I remember having to say to the server, because there was like spicy and then there was extra spicy. I was like, I want the extra spicy. And he said to me, we can't take it back. I said, oh, you will not get it back. Like, don't test me. As both her and I had the spiciest at the whole table. And I remember him coming back and being impressed that, even the broth was gone. But jampong is one of my favorites.
I routinely, when I was traveling in Thailand, I would have to say, I want it spicy. And then I had to say, not Farang spicy, because Farang means foreigner in Thai. And I was like, not Farang spicy, like make it spicy, legit. I want It's spicy. The
More bird's
only
eye.
thing, yeah, the only thing I ever encountered that was actually a bit too spicy for me to eat all on its own without something to temper it was green papaya salad every now and then. Sometime it was like there was this one little lady who she was ancient and she made it by the side of the road. I was rock climbing in like the Krabi Peninsula and walking back from climbing, I would stop and get her somtam. And it was almost a painful experience every time. It was the one thing that was like, okay, there's no rice with this. There's no nothing else to try to like calm
You're on
this
your
heat.
own.
And it's just bird chilies.
My
So
eyes
good.
lit up.
I
I'm like,
know. Like,
yes,
yeah.
that is my level of
Spicy food
spice.
releases endorphins. Like there's a reason that those of us who love it, crave it. The pain feels good.
It is. It's totally pleasurable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love a jumphong. I also love pho. I could probably eat pho a few times a week. And I also love my mom's hamburger soup.
That's what I was eating today was hamburger soup.
Delicious.
Pretty much, I think.
My mom used to make a hamburger soup with barley sometimes. She used to make it with elbow noodles sometimes. I make it with no grain or anything in it. Just the hamburger and the vegetables and the deliciousness. Maybe I'll make a hamburger soup tonight. It sounds delicious.
This one was like Greg's parents got us this packet for Christmas last year, and it was like lentils and the noodles and barley and a couple of types of lentils actually, and then like stock powder basically. And then it was like add this to boiling water with tomatoes and ground beef. So that's what I did. And I definitely had to add spices. I doctored it pretty heavily, but once I'd finished doctoring it, it was great.
Hamburger soup does not have lentils in it unless you're vegan. Or a vegetarian. When I was a vegetarian, I definitely made hamburger soup with lentils. But I think the addition of hamburger and lentils were probably delicious together.
It's great. Yeah. It's like beef barley with lentils is kind of what was going on in my bowl. Anyways, yeah. So yes, tell us what kind of soup is your favorite soup. I can't actually pick now, like, but ramen, but kimchi jjigae, but
kimchi jjigae is a stew. We're taking it off the list.
Stew's off the list.
That's a separate conversation, okay?
Ooh, here's a debate. Is stew soup?
Ooh.
Tell us. Let us know. We want to hear. I'm going to put a poll. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can answer our poll. Is stew soup? Yes or no?
Very good question.
Might be as controversial as the toilet paper above or below.
One for you. Is a hot dog a taco or a sandwich?
Oh yeah, I've heard that one before.
It's neither. It's an abomination. Don't do it. Eat tacos.
It's meat in tube form, as Anthony Bourdain would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, shall we wrap up here?
Let's. What have you got going on right now that you can share with anybody?
Yeah, I have. Oh, it is Monday. If you're listening to this on Monday, I still have a little bit of my Black Friday sale going on. I have 20% off right now on my soul council sessions. And then on my 30 days of healing offers, one is 4 weeks of these little distance healings that I'm doing. It takes me about 15 to 30 minutes to do them and send you over a voice note. So you get one weekly and voice note support in between. They have been so cool. I had a message yesterday from somebody who received one of these from me a few weeks ago. And she's like, my shoulder's been frozen for 4 years and it's freed up finally. And since our healing session, I was like, what? Like, wow, that's wild. So they're really potent. I highly suggest you grab a month of those and maybe buy one for a friend. I don't know. Seems like a good gift to me. I'll send you a gift certificate.
It's a great gift.
Yeah. And then if you want to go deeper with me, I have an offer to have a month of those plus 2 one-on-one sessions and an intuitive tarot or oracle pull by yours truly. And aside from that, I have space for people to come in one-on-one with me for a little bit longer. And I've got my curiosity calls always available if you want to get on a free call and just chat about what working with me deeper looks like.
I love this.
How about you?
I have a Sacred Pleasure Retreat coming up December 3rd in Soup, BC. We still have space for it. If you are debating or if you have questions, reach out, first of all. If you're debating, now is the time to hop off the fence and to unknot your knickers and to get in while you still can. I'm hosting this with two other of my very near and dear colleagues, Kyla Gangao, who is our breathwork specialist, and Andrea Bath, who is the owner of Inwards, but also a sacred writer, writing coach, excuse me. And so she's going to be doing a process with you in terms of creativity. So I have that going on. And then I also have a few other odds and ends, like tarot readings for the end of the year. If you are somebody who wants to have a full tarot reading for the year ahead, now is the time to book, because they will book up quickly. And so you can head over to my website to get that. And I actually have a sacred pleasure talk coming up next week, Thursday. And so I'll put the link to that. And we're just going to really dig into what it means to experience sacred pleasure, what it is. If there's anybody out there that is like averse to this, that immediately whenever I say those words, you're like, oh, I'm not so sure. This is really a chance for you to come in and see what sacred pleasure is all about. So that's Thursday, November 30th.
So this week, as of when you're listening to this.
Yes, this week.
Perfect. And you know where to find us over on social media. Please come and say hello. We are the Woo Curious Podcast on Instagram. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I mean, you can leave 5 stars on any of the platforms, but leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and maybe you'll hear your words on one of the upcoming episodes. And tell your friends if you loved this episode. There's other people that you know who will probably love it too. Bring them along for the journey. Let's grow the Woo crew.
Let's. Thank you so much, Woo crew. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.